podcast is brought to you by Daba, your most comprehensive platform for investing in African stocks, bonds, and managed funds. You can download the Daba app on your favorite Google and Apple app stores. Excellent news to start the week. Between February 16th and February 20th, the BRVM confirmed its positive momentum. Investor confidence strengthened across the regional market, and that confidence was reflected clearly in the numbers. The BRVM Composite Index rose 3.78% to close at 402.38 points. That means the overall market gained value over the week. When the composite moves this way, it signals broad-based buying across multiple sectors, not just one isolated stock. The BRVM 30 also advanced 3.84%, finishing at 187.34 points. This index tracks the 30 most actively traded companies, so its movement often reflects where serious capital is flowing. The BRVM Prestige Index increased 2.65%, closing at 159.42 points. The Prestige segment includes companies with stronger fundamentals and governance standards. When this index rises alongside the broader market, it suggests quality names are participating in the rally. Why does this matter for investors? Because coordinated gains across multiple indices usually indicate institutional participation. It is rarely random. It often means funds and professional investors are building or reinforcing positions. Trading activity also supported the move. More than 21,672,633 shares were exchanged during the week, compared with 26,658 the previous week. Total transaction value reached 8,188.3 million francs CFA. Rising volumes alongside rising prices suggest conviction behind the rally. Let's now look at the top performers. SAFSA Côte d'Ivoire delivered one of the strongest weekly performances, rising 24.56% to close at 4,970 franc CFA. The move was driven by stronger than expected 2025 half-year results and renewed speculative interest. Year to date, the stock's performance stands above 50%. When earnings exceed expectations, markets tend to reprice quickly. Investors reassess future profitability, and valuation multiples expand. That appears to be what happened here. Server Abidjan climbed 23.45% to 3,790 francs CFA. Africa Logistics, Côte d'Ivoire, rose 21.16% to 2,090 francs CFA. What does this signal? It suggests renewed confidence in companies linked to transportation, logistics, and economic recovery themes. When service providers and infrastructure-linked companies rally, it often reflects optimism about business activity and trade flows. SONATEL stood out as the most actively traded stock, with over 173 million francs CFA in transaction value. Its share price increased 3.63% during the week. Beyond price action, SONATEL's fundamentals remain extremely strong. The company reported 2025 consolidated revenue of 1,923.1 billion francs CFA, up 8.3% year over year. EBITDA reached 921.2 billion francs CFA, representing a margin close to 48%. Net income came in at 413.6 billion francs CFA. In simple terms, nearly half of every franc CFA generated in revenue translates into operating profit. That level of margin is exceptional. Free cash flow exceeded 422 billion francs CFA. Strong cash generation supports dividend sustainability and continued infrastructure investment. The company approved a gross dividend of 1,933 francs CFA per share. After withholding tax, the net dividend is 1,740 francs CFA. At a share price near 29,000 francs CFA, the dividend yield is slightly above 6%. For income-focused investors, that is significant. It confirms SONATEL's position as a core income stock on the BRVM. Orange Côte d'Ivoire also released solid 2025 results. Consolidated revenue reached 197.1 billion francs CFA, up 10.4% from 2024. EBITDA grew to 424.1 billion francs CFA. Net income rose to 167.8 billion francs CFA. Operating profit increased to 287.2 billion francs CFA. Operating cash flow climbed to 335.5 billion francs CFA. The company proposed a gross dividend of 800 francs CFA per share. Net dividends amount to 720 francs CFA for corporate shareholders and 704 francs CFA for individual shareholders after withholding tax. These results reinforce Orange Côte d'Ivoire's position as a high-yield telecom stock in WEMU markets. Revenue growth was driven by mobile services, fiber expansion, and Orange Money across Côte d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, and Liberia. For investors, telecoms remain defensive anchors. Recurring subscription-based revenue, strong cash flow, and dividend visibility make them stabilizers in a diversified portfolio. Now, let's turn to the bond market. Bond market capitalization declined slightly by 0.21% to 11,469.6 billion francs CFA. However, trading activity surged. Total bond transactions reached 7,259 million francs CFA, compared with 730.92 million francs CFA the previous week. The majority of activity concentrated on a sovereign 10-year bond issued by Côte d'Ivoire. Over 3,141,427 bonds were exchanged, representing more than 7,259 million francs CFA in value. This single bond accounted for 51% of total bond market transactions. Why the strong interest? Sovereign bonds offer predictable coupon payments and lower perceived risk compared to equities. In uncertain environments, investors often rebalance toward fixed income instruments with intermediate maturities such as 8-year or 10-year bonds. For conservative investors, these maturities provide stability, known yields, and portfolio diversification benefits. What can investors take away from this week? First, the equity market rally appears broad-based and supported by rising volumes. Second, telecom leaders such as SONATEL and Orange Côte d'Ivoire continue to demonstrate strong profitability and dividend capacity. Third, bond markets remain active, with sovereign instruments attracting large allocations. Looking ahead to the week of February 23rd to February 27th, several equities present valuation gaps relative to target prices. Some names appear undervalued compared with their projected 2026 fair values. On the bond side, selected sovereign and corporate maturities continue to offer attractive yield profiles within the UMOA monetary framework. However, not every opportunity is equal. Some configurations justify reinforcement. Others require caution or partial reduction. Strategic positioning matters. To receive weekly stock recommendations, detailed equity research, exclusive data, and reduced investment fees, subscribe to Daba Pro. With Daba Pro, you do not simply follow markets. You stay ahead of them. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Daba Markets Talk podcast. We'll be back next week with another update. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating, follow us, and share with friends. Remember, this information is for educational purposes. Always do your own research or consult with a financial advisor before making investment decisions. And download the Daba app on your app store to start investing in African stocks, bonds, and manage portfolios through your phone and find other helpful content. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing your financial knowledge.